guys, I would have done this while it was trending, especially given the fact that I'm recording this video on Sunday, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a very dumb take that comes out Monday on ESPN First Take. But Ryan Clark is just the gift that keeps on giving, in my opinion. And the reason why this right here is, in fact, the case is because everything that comes out of his mouth does, in fact, have to do with, well, I know you guys are probably already thinking it's white people bashing, whatever. However, there's actually something else going on that was covered literally about 2 weeks ago that explains why it is that Ryan Clark has been having the takes that he's had. And, of course, recently, the new one is obviously the take on Josh Allen potentially winning the MVP award and it being the equivalent to Charles Barkley's 1993 award. Let me roll this for you.
Josh Allen's MVP would be like Charles Barkley's MVP.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, because I think right now what happens with people like Patrick Mahomes, with people like Lamar Jackson, is we get fatigued, and I think the voters get fatigued. And what happens is the MVP becomes a narrative-driven award. Right? Every time you see the numbers put up on the screen, you can clearly look at those numbers and say that guy's having a better season than Josh Allen. Although Josh Allen is having a great season.
Yes.
Better than expected.
Josh Allen is having an MVP caliber season, but you win the MVP because you're better than everybody else.
Yes.
Right now, Josh Allen's not playing the quarterback position better than Lamar Jackson is. But it's going to be, well, Lamar Jackson has 2. Patrick Mahomes has 2. What is the other quarterback we count on that tier that's never won one?
Absolutely.
Josh Allen.
It's like giving Karl Malone, right, the MVP, because you could have given it to Jordan every single year, but people get tired of giving it to him.
Then we need to create a crusade to fight sports apathy. Fight performance, sports performance apathy.
Now, guys, I want to say something real quick. When you have a past of racial takes like Ryan Clark, any take that even is somewhat sound, like this MVP discussion, immediately gets tossed out because of the past things that you have said and the past beefs that you have carried on about. Okay, now that right there was the bit that went viral. Okay, now bear with me for a second because I'll give you my personal thoughts on who should win the NFL MVP award towards the end of the video. However, many people are calling Ryan Clark out, basically saying that this is a take with a certain racial connotation. And of course, this take also involves some deleted tweets from Ryan Clark as well. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself that Ryan Clark is once again here to race bait, and while I do believe that that is the case, I also have to say this right here too, especially to all the people out there who think that I'm just going to be a shill for Josh Allen. I'm here to tell you guys right now, I think that the MVP race between those two is very close. But like I said, I'll get to that right there more so towards the end because obviously some good arguments come up. But here's the thing. There's a reason why it is that Ryan Clark has the takes that he has on this issue, and it's got to do with what was discussed in an article that came out roughly 2 weeks ago from Outkick. And I'll get to that article here in a second. But about Ryan Clark and about those takes, about that particular take, it seems to me like the narrative here is that Ryan Clark has got to stick with the whole notion that Lamar is in fact the NFL MVP and should be the MVP. He talked about it literally an hour earlier before ESPN First Take. Let me roll this clip for you guys.
This, though, the MVP is a narrative award. Of the quarterbacks that we put on the pantheon of the greats in this era, Josh Allen is the next one that hasn't won an MVP. Patrick has 2. Lamar has 2. We talk about Josh Allen in sort of that same conversation, but when I look at what Lamar Jackson has done this season, he deserves to win the MVP. And then I can look at Josh Allen in a silo and think about what I saw against the Los Angeles Rams. I can think about what I saw in the Detroit Lions win on the road, and you say, well, damn, Josh Allen deserves to win the MVP as well. I think both of these men have played out of their mind. The difficult thing and the hardest reason to pull it away from Lamar Jackson is this is a guy that's already won 2 MVPs, and this is his best performance yet as a pro.
Personally, I believe that this NFL MVP voting between these two quarterbacks is extremely close. But bear in mind, I'll get to that more towards the end, but the award is most valuable player, as in most valuable to their team. I remember, speaking of my team, speaking of the Packers, I remember when Aaron Rodgers back in 2012 had a statistically better overall season than Peyton Manning, but he got stiffed on the award. But I also remember Aaron in 2016 being more valuable to his team to run the table year, and yet Matt Ryan got the award. I also remember 2014, you could have made the argument that DeMarco Murray should have won the award over Aaron Rodgers. I also remember, I'll put it this way here, the NFL MVP voting typically tends to go to a quarterback. You've got two of them here, but to the people out there who have made the argument that Derrick Henry is the reason why it is that Lamar Jackson is having such a great season, I do adhere to that argument to a certain extent. The two complement one another very, very well. But I've also seen the Baltimore Ravens do well with Tyler Huntley at quarterback when Lamar Jackson was injured. Just saying. Okay, so you guys obviously heard that. However, one could argue that the real reason why Lamar Jackson is having as great of a season as he is having at this moment in time is because of the guy that you're seeing right here in the B-roll footage. Hopefully Fox won't copyright me. I had to put it inside of a box. Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry has made that offense work. I'll put it this way here. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson actually complement one another very, very well. Where Josh Allen, on the other hand, lost his top receiver, that there being Stephon Diggs in the offseason. And, of course, one of Josh Allen's is offensive lineman, comes out and basically goes to his defense. But I want to say this right quick while this right here is rolling in the B-roll footage. If you are a Buffalo Bills fan, and take it from a guy who is a Green Bay Packers fan who literally watched Stephon Diggs, who played for the Minnesota Vikings for years before he got traded to Buffalo, you are better off without Stephon Diggs. And Josh Allen had a phenomenal season in spite of Stephon Diggs not being with the team. Now, why is that the case? It's because Stephon Diggs was always a problem child. I mean, seriously, this same guy went to the Minnesota media the day he was traded, and he was basically saying, "Thank you, God, for getting me out of there," to their face. I watched it for years when he was with the Vikings as a Packers fan. I watched it. I listened to the things that he was saying. I read the articles. Trust me, this right here is a guy, and I am still bewildered on how it was he was able to stay in Buffalo as long as he has. Trust me, you were better off without him. But let me get back on track. The argument for MVP, or the most valuable player award, typically tends to go to the player that was most valuable to that team that they were playing for. There's also been cases where players had put together a great statistical season and did not actually get the award. And there's also cases where the player was, in fact, the most valuable player, most valuable to his team, and also did not get the award and got screwed over in the statistical discussion. So if you want to talk about inconsistency with the NFL MVP voting, then that right there would be a serious conversation. However, to compare Josh Allen winning the MVP award to Charles Barkley's 1993 MVP award and saying this basically voter fatigue, I think that right there may be a little bit out of bounds. And here's the thing. I would be inclined to agree with Ryan Clark. However, the problem is this right here. As I mentioned with the Bobby Barack article from Outkick, there's something there that nobody wants to mention. Now, guys, I'm putting up the tweet that Mr. Barack, and I know that I may be mispronouncing his name. I'm putting this up here, whether it's not getting on the stage with Sage Steele because she's a conservative, whether it be that long 4.5-minute video that he did where he basically told everybody that voted for Donald Trump, "I have no respect for you," whether it be that or any of the other takes that he's had in the past where he has race baited, or whether he's been disrespectful to those who served in uniform, or he's disrespectful to the fans who have said, look, we're not exactly okay with NFL players kneeling during the national anthem. We're not okay with them sitting. The fact of the matter is this right here. Ryan Clark has an issue, and it's an issue that ESPN is going to have going forward. That's why this video is called the Ryan Clark problem, because it goes to credibility. But when did this stupidity with Ryan Clark really and truly take off? Well, it was probably a few weeks ago when he decided to, for whatever reason, to get into it with Aaron Rodgers. Well, not really with Aaron Rodgers. I would say it was more along the lines of him and Mina Kimes throwing shade right back at him because Rodgers mentioned something about how it is that ESPN and NFL has got a lot of personalities who never actually played the game out here commentating on the game. Now, in the segment on the Pat McAfee show, basically what Rodgers was saying was that ESPN at one point in time was very, very much about highlights. SportsCenter, this is back in the golden days when SportsCenter showed you the highlights from NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA games, hell, even golf. That's what got SportsCenter, ESPN right where it is, and now it's more personality driven. That's all that Aaron Rodgers was saying, and apparently two people, Mina Kimes and Ryan Clark, very, very stupidly decided to out themselves as the two people who were the most offended. Now, guys, I would play those clips and I would play those responses, but if I was to do that, this right here would then turn into a Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Clark Beef video, which of course I think you can make an hour-long essay on I think it's more the Ryan Clark Beef with Aaron Rodgers situation, because I don't think Aaron Rodgers really has a problem with Ryan Clark. I don't even think he really considers him, because Ryan Clark at the end of the day works behind a desk at ESPN commentating on other football players, which of course you will see in the Bobby Barack article seems to suggest anybody not covered by a certain agent. We'll get to that here in a second. But I wanted to go back to that little beef for a second, because after Ryan Clark said what he said, Aaron Rodgers goes on the McAfee show, and what does he do? He says what he has got to say. Not going to go full into detail. Like I said, it would probably be a much, much longer video if I was to do that. But I will link the clips in the description box for you guys to check out. So Ryan Clark goes out there and makes his 5 minute long video basically calling Aaron Rodgers a fraud, and then Aaron Rodgers doesn't really respond to it at all. He just kind of walks away from it. And now you've got Ryan Clark going out there on the Pivot podcast, his podcast, saying that I'm taking the high road?
Resolution, right? Like, I know we can't fight, and he doesn't want to fight. Like, that's not what this is. He wants to be able to say what he wants to say, whether it's disrespectful to me or not, because that's what's on his heart, and that's what he feels like he needs to get out. But my thought process is, why do I have to be the one to process this like an adult, right? Why do I have to be the take the high road guy?
Now, real quick, I want to get back to the MVP discussion, which is exactly where we originally wanted to start at. I'll get back to it more towards the end of the video, but I need to talk about this particular situation to kind of help, let's just say, set up the whole notion of why it is that Ryan Clark is the way that he is and he's not fooling anybody. So you get mad because somebody said something that was not directly thrown at you, and then you turn right back around and you turn it into a beef, only to then get responded to, only to then turn right back around making a very, very cringy video where you have to tell everybody who you are, where Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, a 4-time MVP, Super Bowl winner, doesn't have to tell you who the hell he is. And then you come back later on after not getting a response from the guy and you say that you took the high road? It goes to credibility, guys. The Bobby Barack article I found to be very interesting because it exposed the fact that Ryan Clark at this moment in time is contractually obligated not to talk about certain stars. One said star happens to have the same agent as RC. It's Deshaun Watson. If there's a quarterback in the NFL this year who's had a lot of hype, or has had a lot of hype over the past couple of years in the offseason market of who wants him, you could talk about Russell Wilson. You could talk about Aaron Rodgers. I think Deshaun Watson's probably how do I say this? I think Deshaun Watson's really the biggest disappointment. The reason why, of course, is because Deshaun Watson has been an absolute disappointment since he's been in Cleveland. But Ryan Clark is contractually obligated not to talk about how bad Deshaun Watson has been. Instead, we get obsession. We get obsessive takes like what you're about to see.
But you're saying that
It's not, Greeny, it's not painful, Greeny. I told you before, we have had this conversation. I had already told my kids that Daddy was going to get a free trip to Disney World. You talk about Mike McCarthy, he gave a new language to the Dallas Cowboys. That language is simple. It is English for me. I knew exactly what the play was, Greeny. I told Jordan, Jaden, Logan, I said, I just signed the paper. Daddy's going to get to say, we're going to Disney World. He never saw me. I locked Ike on the backside. I was ready to go, Greeny. He never looked at me because he's so good, he don't need to see the other people. He throws the ball over my hand. I roll over. I'm dejected. I've now let the city of Pittsburgh down, myself, my children. I've let the whole entire Louisiana down. I'm still feeling good, though. We might win. They call timeout because we start balling a little bit. He looks at me. He says, hey, 2-5. First off, Aaron, you know my freaking name. You've been studying for this game for 2 weeks. Don't call me 2-5. My friends call me that. You ain't my friend. And then he gonna tell me, and it wasn't that it was just this much out of my reach. It's that he had the gumption, the gall, the audacity in my lowest of times to stick salt in the wound. And so listen, do I love the player? Yes. Do I want to fist fight the person? Yes. And I ain't scared. I don't care. Green Bay, Wisconsin not gonna jump on me no more because he's finna be gone. We gonna see about that one day, Aaron. I'm telling you.
So I heard a lot of that is just like the way Greenberg and they hear, hey, he's telling a funny story. But I do think it left a bit of a mark and he's sitting there, and that part of this thing that's fueling and feeding this feud is he's been waiting for his opportunity to talk smack.
What I got out of that was you, as safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers, told your kids that they were going to get a free trip to Disneyland. You told them that they were going to win. You told your town that you were going to win, and you lost. You lost, okay? Pick yourself up, get back on the horse, and go try again. Or there is something else that you could probably do, Ryan, that would actually go a long way in this situation, and that is simply not lie to your kids. I mean, seriously, the moral of this entire situation is don't lie to your MFing kids. That right there is what I got out of that there. Don't tell your kids that they're going to get a free trip to Disneyland and you turn right back around and you lose. You still mad that Aaron Rodgers threw a pass to Greg Jennings that went right by your hands and you knew the play. I mean, you talk about being an effeminate male. Seriously. And trust me, ESPN has got their load of effeminate males. I personally think that Jay Williams is probably the most effeminate of them all, but of course this video is about Ryan Clark, so let me get back to it. The point is this right here. Ryan Clark is contractually obligated not to be unbiased. Right now, at this moment in time, Rodgers, the quarterback of the New York Jets, and everything that's been coming out about that organization, quite frankly, makes it a much, much easier target to hit. It's low-hanging fruit. When there are definitely players out there, like, say, Deshaun Watson, who you are contractually obligated not to go after, that probably should be derided much, much more, given the circumstances behind that trade and how he ended up in Cleveland. Now, guys, I want to say something real quick. When you have a past of racial takes like Ryan Clark, any take that even is somewhat sound, like this MVP discussion, immediately gets tossed out because of the past things that you have said and the past beefs that you have carried on about. Now, the clip from the beginning of the video, I went ahead and obviously played once again to kind of let you guys know that this right here is the truth about Ryan Clark. Even if he brings up a take that may seem like it makes a little bit of sense, because of the stupid takes of his past, people are automatically going to view this as a take of somebody who has an extreme level of bias. Even though I obviously pointed out the fact that he's contractually obligated not to go after certain players who've actually had some pretty piss poor years and have been absolute total embarrassing disappointments, the fact of the matter is this here. This right here should not surprise anybody, and the backlash towards Clark should not surprise anybody because, honestly, Ryan Clark did this to himself. The point is, nobody sees him as credible, and ESPN has got to get their credibility back. That is the problem that you have with Ryan Clark, is his extreme lack of credibility. Even if the take is somewhat solid, people are always going to look at Ryan Clark and say that you're bringing this up from a point of racism. That right there is what you're doing. You're just automatically anti-white, even though Ryan Clark obviously has a past of being anti-white. The fact of the matter is this here. ESPN is always going to have a problem when it comes to Ryan Clark because of his lack of credibility, and also, to go on top of that, because of his past obsessions. That's why I brought that whole Aaron Rodgers bit. Everything that Ryan Clark says is going to sound like it's coming from some level of a deep down inside discontent, or it's going to come from a certain bias that people are quite frankly sick and tired of, and it's something that ESPN is going to have to make a decision on real soon. Which brings me to one of my last 2 points, and I'm going to go ahead and close this down. There was something in that Bobby Barack article that I forgot to mention, and it's this here. Anonymous sources, and I say anonymous sources because anonymous sources are in fact anonymous, and they typically tend to not be credible. However, in the world of ESPN and the world of sports, anonymous sources, especially if you have multiple anonymous sources within an organization, have come out and said that ESPN is actually trying to get rid of Ryan Clark because the woke welfare has quite frankly ran out. And also, to go on top of that, all the other conflicts of interest as well. The fact of the matter is that Ryan Clark is not a credible person. And given this recent take with recent dramas, yeah, I have a feeling that deleting all these tweets and going back and forth with Outkick is not going to end very, very well for Ryan Clark. It's like I said, ESPN's got a problem, and that problem is going to be a credibility problem with him because they can now see that, or they're now starting to see that every single one of Ryan Clark's takes are going to be perceived as coming from some form of racial bias or some form of grudge that's been held in the past, if I did not already say that before. But I did tell you guys that I was going to give you my honest take on the MVP race. I think that the most valuable player award should go to the player who is most valuable to their team. And I do believe that Lamar Jackson has obviously had a little bit more help when it comes to Derrick Henry. However, if Josh Allen was to win the award, I don't believe that it would be the equivalent of Charles Barkley's award in 1993, the belief being that they just gave the award to Charles Barkley because they were tired of voting for Michael Jordan. I don't think that's the case at all. There's a legitimate I would say a legitimate gripe for Josh Allen. However, what I would probably do is I would probably think about it this way here. If the two players end up seeing one another in the playoffs, which I personally believe will happen because the Ravens will be the 3 seed and the Bills will be the 2 seed, I personally feel that both of these teams will be playing one another in the second round of the playoffs. More than likely, Lamar, of course, will have to go to Buffalo if this is the case. I think that game there should ultimately decide the MVP race, as in who the hell was the most effective. But that right there could be a conversation for another day. With that right there being said, make sure you guys please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.